I still remember the way the string lights shimmered over the white tent, like stars trying too hard to look elegant. My sister's wedding was everything my mother had ever dreamed of: lavish, loud, and painfully perfect. Every corner of that countryside estate screamed money, from the gold-trimmed tablecloths to the ice sculptures that looked like they were shipped from heaven itself. I stood at the entrance for a good minute before walking in, clutching my small purse like it could protect me from the memories this place would dig up. My mother had texted me that morning, "Don't wear anything too bright, Grace. We don't want you standing out." That was always her way of saying, "You're here, but don't you dare take the spotlight." So, I wore a simple navy blue dress, one I'd bought on sale. I told myself it looked understated, but next to my sister's glittering bridesmaids in designer gowns, I'd look like the distant cousin no one remembered inviting. I found my name card on the seating chart near the reception door. I scanned the elegant handwriting: Grace Mitchell, table 16. My eyes moved down the list. My parents were at table 1. My sister's college friends filled tables 2 through 6. Even distant relatives I barely knew had better seats. Table 16 was in the corner, right beside the wall. At first, I thought it had to be a mistake. I even asked one of the wedding planners if they'd switched something by accident. She smiled politely and said, "No mistake, ma'am. Mrs. Mitchell specifically requested that." My mother had requested that I sit alone by the wall. I felt my throat tighten, but I forced myself to smile. I was 36 years old. I wasn't going to let a chair ruin me. Still, as I walked toward that lonely corner, I could feel eyes following me. Not pitying, just curious. Like they were trying to figure out why the bride's sister was being treated like an uninvited guest. From where I sat, I could see everything. My sister laughing with her new in-laws, my mother showing off her jewelry, my father nodding quietly, pretending not to notice. I'd been invisible for most of my life, but somehow this was worse. I wasn't invisible tonight. I was deliberately set aside. A server came by to pour champagne. "Are you waiting for someone?" he asked kindly. I gave a small laugh. "No, just me." He nodded awkwardly and walked away. I sat there for a while, pretending to scroll through my phone, pretending it didn't bother me that my own family had literally put me against the wall, that I had missed work shifts, rearranged my schedule, and driven 3 hours to be here for this. Then I heard a voice behind me, deep, calm, and unexpected. "Mind if I sit here?" I looked up. A man in his late 30s, maybe early 40s, was standing there holding a drink. Dark hair, gray suit, an easy smile that didn't look rehearsed. I blinked. "Oh, I think this table's empty," I said, trying not to sound defensive. He sat down anyway. "Good, then I won't be stealing anyone's spot." I blinked. "You're not with the groom's side." He smirked slightly. "Let's say I'm here for business, but I hate small talk. You look like you might appreciate silence." That made me laugh softly. "You read that right." He raised his glass. "To survival." "To survival," I echoed, clinking mine against his. For the first time that evening, I didn't feel completely out of place, but something about him unsettled me. Not in a bad way, just familiar, like I'd met him before. Then, as the wedding speeches began, my mother glanced across the hall, right at me, and frowned when she saw I wasn't alone anymore. I saw her whisper something to Samantha, who turned, looked in my direction, and rolled her eyes. My chest tightened again. I wanted to disappear. But before I could, The man leaned closer and said quietly, "Don't move. Act like you're with me." I turned to him, confused. "What?" He smiled faintly, his gaze locked somewhere past me. "Trust me, Grace. Just act like you're with me." I froze. He knew my name. And in that moment, I realized this stranger knew more about my family than he should have. When he said my name, I felt a chill crawl down my spine. I hadn't introduced myself. No one at the table had mentioned it. And yet, this stranger, this man who had just shown up at my sister's wedding, spoke my name like he'd known it for years. I must have looked startled because he smiled softly and said, "Relax, your name was on the seating chart." I nodded slowly, pretending to believe that, though something in his tone told me it wasn't the full truth. Before I could ask more, the wedding host announced the start of dinner, and music filled the room. My mother's voice carried through the crowd, bright and cheerful. She looked so proud standing beside Samantha and Ethan, her perfect family. Watching them like that pulled me straight back into my childhood, as if time folded over itself. Samantha had always been the perfect daughter, the one with the golden curls and the dramatic laugh that turned heads. Our mother adored her, worshipped her even. And me? I was the helper, the background character in every memory. When we were little, Mom used to say, "Grace, be a good sister and let Samantha go first." It didn't matter if it was a game, a meal, or even college applications later on. Samantha always went first, and I was told to understand. I remember the day our mother told me there wasn't enough money to send both of us to university. I'd already been accepted to nursing school. Samantha hadn't even applied anywhere yet. Still, Mom said, "Grace, you're responsible. You'll figure something out. Samantha needs time to find her path." So I deferred my admission and took a job at a local diner to help the family. Samantha used that year to travel with friends and find herself. When she came back, my college fund was gone. She'd used it for fashion school in New York. Mom called it an investment. That was the first time I truly learned what my place in the family was, the one who gives so others can shine. Back in the present, I pushed the memory away and tried to focus on the table. The stranger, Daniel, as I later learned, was quiet but observant. He wasn't like most of the guests. His eyes didn't wander to the decor or the bride. He seemed to be watching people, studying them, almost like he was searching for something. At one point, I caught him glancing toward Ethan, my sister's new husband. Ethan laughed loudly with his groomsmen, his expensive watch flashing under the light. The way Daniel's jaw tensed made me wonder if they knew each other. "You seem familiar," I finally said. "Have we met before?" He looked at me for a long moment, like he was weighing what to say. Then he smiled. "You really don't remember me, do you?" My stomach tightened. Should I? Instead of answering, he reached for his drink and took a slow sip. "Maybe not, but I remember you." The way he said it wasn't flirtatious. It was heavy, like there was a story behind it. I stared at him, trying to place that face, his voice, his eyes. There was something there, something I couldn't quite grasp. Before I could ask more, my mother appeared beside our table, her fake smile stretched tight. "Grace, I didn't realize you brought a guest." I opened my mouth, but Daniel spoke first. "I'm Daniel," he said smoothly, standing to shake her hand. "I work with Ethan." Her smile faltered for a split second. "Oh," she said, recovering. "Well, I see." Then she turned to me, lowering her voice. You could have told me, dear. We could have seated you closer to the family. I looked at her blankly. You mean instead of by the wall? Her jaw tightened. Don't be dramatic, Grace. You know how complicated these things are. We had important guests to consider. I'm your daughter, I said quietly. She sighed impatiently, glancing around to make sure no one heard. Please, not tonight. Don't make a scene. Daniel watched the exchange silently, and I could feel his eyes burning into my mother as she walked away. Seems like she's not used to being questioned, he said under his breath. You could say that, I murmured, forcing a small laugh. My mother's been running this family like a PR agency since forever. He smiled faintly, but didn't reply. As the band started playing again, I caught my reflection in one of the mirrors near the wall. A woman trying too hard to stay composed, sitting beside a stranger who somehow seemed to know more about her life than anyone else. I didn't know who Daniel really was or why he was there, but when he said, "You really don't remember me, do you?" Something deep inside me whispered that whatever he was about to reveal, it wasn't going to be simple. I couldn't stop replaying his words in my head. You really don't remember me, do you? As the music swelled and the newlyweds danced in the center of the hall, I tried to keep my attention there, on the smiling faces, the clinking glasses, the picture-perfect scene my mother had orchestrated. But my eyes kept drifting back to the man beside me, Daniel. He sat with a quiet ease, like someone who belonged everywhere and nowhere at once. Every now and then, he'd glance toward the head table, toward Ethan, and something about his expression shifted. It wasn't jealousy or anger, it was calculation. After a long silence, I leaned closer. You said you remember me. From where? He looked down at his drink, swirling it slowly. You used to work at St. Mary's Hospital, right? That caught me off guard. Yes, I said cautiously, for almost 10 years. I was there, he said softly. About 5 years ago, my father had surgery. You were one of the nurses on his floor. I blinked. I met hundreds of patients' families over the years. I'm sorry, I said honestly. I meet so many people, He smiled faintly. Don't worry, you were different. Kind. You stayed after your shift one night just to talk to him because he couldn't sleep. He used to tell me that was the first time he felt treated like a person, not a patient. I felt warmth creep up my chest. That sounds like something I'd do, I said with a small laugh, but I'm glad he remembered. He did, Daniel said quietly, and I did too. There was something in the way he said it, sincere, almost protective. It made me feel seen in a way I hadn't felt in years. Still, a question lingered. So, if that's how you remember me, how do you know Ethan? He hesitated, eyes flicking to the dance floor where Ethan was twirling Samantha like they were royalty. We work together, he said finally. Business partners, technically. Though I'm starting to think we see the world very differently. I studied him. You don't seem like someone who enjoys weddings. He chuckled. I don't. But Ethan asked me to come, said it would mean a lot. I didn't realize until now how much he meant that. His tone had changed, darker, sharper. Before I could ask, my mother's voice echoed through the speakers, introducing a slideshow of Sam and Ethan's journey. Pictures of them filled the screen. Beach trips, holidays, candlelight dinners. Every image felt carefully curated to scream perfect. But then one photo froze on the screen longer than the rest. It was a group shot. Samantha, Ethan, and a few of their college friends. And there, at the edge of the frame, was me. Younger, smiling awkwardly, holding a red cup. I frowned. That picture was from a college event I went to, years ago, back when I was 21. back when I was dating someone I only knew as Ethan. My chest tightened. I hadn't thought about him in years. That short, sweet, confusing few weeks before he vanished without a word. I turned to Daniel slowly. "Wait," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Ethan Parker went to Westlake University, right?" Daniel nodded cautiously. "And his major was business administration?" "Yes." I stared at the screen again, the pieces slowly clicking together. "Oh my God," I whispered. "It's him." Daniel's jaw tensed. "So you do remember him?" My stomach dropped. "You're telling me my sister's husband is the same Ethan who ghosted me in college?" Daniel didn't answer. He didn't need to. The look in his eyes said it all. I could barely breathe. Memories came rushing back. The late night talks, the promises, the sudden silence. I'd cried for weeks, blaming myself, thinking I'd scared him off. And now, he was here, married to my sister. I felt the air leave my lungs as the music swelled again. Daniel leaned closer, his voice barely audible. "I didn't want to tell you here, but you deserve to know." My hands trembled under the table. Does he remember me?" Daniel gave a bitter half smile. "Oh, he remembers you, Grace. He just hopes you don't remember him." I stared at him, the sound of laughter and applause muffled around us. Ethan had pretended not to know me all evening. Not a single flicker of recognition, not even when our eyes met during the ceremony. But if Daniel was telling the truth, that wasn't coincidence. It was strategy. "Why are you telling me this?" I whispered. Daniel's eyes flicked toward the head table again. "Because you're not the only one he's lied to." And just like that, my world tilted on its axis. My pulse was thundering in my ears. The laughter, the clinking glasses, the music, all of it blurred into a muffled hum as Daniel's words echoed inside my head. "You're not the only one he's lied to." I stared across the room at Ethan, who was now surrounded by guests, flashing that same confident smile I once fell for. The way he held Samantha's waist, whispered into her ear, made me sick. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I felt like the ground beneath me was shifting, like my past and present were colliding in the most twisted way imaginable. "Grace," Daniel said softly, "you okay?" I blinked hard, realizing I'd been staring too long. I, yeah, I can't believe this." Daniel leaned back, studying me. "You really didn't know, did you?" I shook my head, forcing out a broken laugh. "No? Daniel, my own sister is marrying the man who ghosted me in college, the same man I thought I loved, and he didn't even flinch when he saw me tonight." I covered my mouth, my fingers trembling. He nodded slowly, his gaze softening. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way." But I barely heard him. My mind had already drifted back to a time when everything was simpler. It was my junior year at Westlake University. I worked part-time at a campus coffee shop to afford textbooks. One evening, he walked in. Ethan Parker, or so he said. Business major, sharp smile, expensive jacket, the kind of confidence that made people listen when he spoke. He started coming every evening, ordering the same drink, black coffee, 2 sugars. After the third week, he finally asked, "Do you ever take a break?" That night, we talked for hours after my shift ended. About everything, our dreams, our families, how we both felt like we had to prove ourselves. He said his parents were tough on him, that he didn't come from money. I remember thinking how grounded he seemed, how real. For a while, it felt like I'd met someone who actually saw me, not the responsible sister, not the background character, just me. He met my friends, we laughed, we kissed under the old library steps after a late night study session. It was all so vivid, so genuine, until one day he just vanished. No call, no message, nothing. I checked his dorm, gone. His number stopped working. My emails bounced back. It was like he'd never existed. I blamed myself, convinced I'd said something wrong or that I'd been too much, too fast. My mother found me crying one evening and told me, "Men like that don't want girls like you, Grace. Be realistic." I carried that sentence for years, like a wound. Back in the present, I felt tears sting my eyes as I whispered, "He just disappeared. I never even got a reason." Daniel was quiet for a moment before saying, "He didn't just disappear, Grace. Someone made sure he did." I looked at him sharply. "What do you mean?" He hesitated, glancing around before lowering his voice. "Your mother. She found out about you two back then." I froze. "What?" "She told him things. Said you were unstable, that you were obsessed with him, that dating you could ruin his chances of getting close to your family later. She made him believe he was saving himself from a mistake." The words sliced through me like glass. "My mother?" I whispered, my voice cracking. Daniel nodded. "Ethan mentioned it once, years ago, when we started working together. He said it was ironic that he'd almost dated his future wife's sister. I didn't think much of it then, but now it makes sense." I stared at him, my mind spinning. My mother had always been protective of Samantha, but to interfere like that, to destroy something good just to keep the family image intact? No, she wouldn't, I said, shaking my head. "Grace," Daniel said quietly, "you know she would." I was about to find my seat when I realized something strange. There was no seat with my name on it. I looked again. Every table had neatly printed name cards. Uncle Tom, Aunt Claire, Mr. and Mrs. Harris, but not me. My heart started to race. Maybe it was a mistake, I thought. I walked to the wedding planner, trying to sound calm. "Hi, I think there's been an error. I don't see my name anywhere." She checked her list, smiled apologetically, and said, "Oh, you're her sister, right? The bride's sister?" "Yes," I replied, forcing a smile. Her expression turned awkward. "I was told you'd prefer to sit alone by the back." My stomach dropped. "What?" She gestured toward a small table near the far corner by the kitchen door. One chair, one plate, one glass. I wanted to cry, not because of the chair itself, but because it was so deliberate. My family wanted to hide me away like I was some embarrassing relative who might ruin the photos. So I sat there, alone, watching the people I loved most celebrate without me. Then, out of nowhere, someone pulled up a chair beside me. "Mind if I sit here?" a voice said. I looked up, startled. A tall man in a dark gray suit smiled at me. His eyes were gentle, green, with a spark of something familiar. "I'm sorry, but this seat empty," he said, smirking. "Perfect for someone who hates table talk." I gave a small laugh despite myself. "You shouldn't sit here. My family might think—" He cut me off. "Let them think what they want. How about we give them something to talk about? And before I could respond, he leaned slightly closer and whispered, "Act like you're with me." I blinked. What? He grinned. "Just trust me, you'll see." I froze. For a moment, I thought maybe he was just being kind, but then I noticed something in his tone. Something that suggested he knew exactly what he was doing. The music swelled, laughter filled the room again, and I tried to play along. I didn't know who he was or why he cared, but for the first time that night, I didn't feel invisible. Then my sister looked over from her table. Her expression froze. She whispered something to her new husband and glared at me with pure shock. And in that moment, I realized this man wasn't a random stranger. He was someone my sister knew, someone she never wanted to see with me. I stared at the man beside me, trying to piece together the puzzle. Why had my sister looked so rattled? And how did this stranger fit into the picture? He must have sensed my confusion because he leaned slightly closer, his voice low but calm. "Don't look so tense. You're doing great," he said with a small smile. I tried to play along, but my thoughts were spinning. "Who are you?" I finally asked. He hesitated. "Let's just say someone who knows a few truths your sister would rather keep buried." My breath caught. "Excuse me?" He gave a half smile, the kind that hides a story behind it. "We'll talk later. For now, let's keep our dissing." I turned my gaze toward the main table again. My sister's smile had faltered. She was whispering urgently to her husband, who glared at me like he'd seen a ghost into the room. Whatever game was being played tonight, I was right in the middle of it, and I didn't even know the rules. The man extended his hand. "I'm Alex," he finally said. I shook it cautiously. "Okay, Alex, mind telling me why my sister just looked like she'd seen a scandal walk into her wedding?" He chuckled quietly. "Because she has secrets, and I happen to know one of them." I studied his face. He was calm, confident, but there was something haunted in his eyes. "And why would you tell me this?" "Because," he said, leaning in, "you deserve to know what really happened 3 years ago." My heart skipped. What happened 3 years ago? He didn't answer. Instead, he nodded toward the dance floor. "Let's dance. I'll explain later. Too many ears here." I hesitated, but something in me wanted to know, so I stood up. As we moved under the soft lights, I could feel every pair of eyes on us. My parents whispered. My aunt frowned. My sister, she was livid. When the song ended, Alex led me toward the hallway near the back entrance. "Okay," he said quietly. "Here's the truth. Your sister wasn't supposed to marry him." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "She was engaged before. To me." It felt like the ground dropped beneath me. "You... what?" He nodded slowly. "We were together for 2 years. She ended things suddenly, said she'd met someone else. I didn't know who until tonight." My pulse was racing. "You're saying my sister left you for her current husband?" Alex's eyes met mine. "Exactly. And it gets worse." He took out his phone and showed me something. It was a series of old messages, texts between him and my sister. The last one read, "If anyone ever finds out, I'll deny everything." I felt my stomach twist. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because," he said softly, "you deserve to know why she's been treating you like the family outcast. you're her biggest threat. I stared at him, completely lost. Threat? How? He sighed, glancing back toward the ballroom. Because she knows you've always been the honest one, and she can't afford for anyone honest to start digging. I didn't understand all of it yet, but one thing was clear. My sister wasn't the angel everyone thought she was. And Alex wasn't just some stranger who sat next to me. He was a ghost from her past, back to uncover the truth. I stood frozen in that dim hallway, clutching Alex's phone, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure someone would hear it. My sister's messages were right there, proof that she'd hidden something. But the words, "You're her biggest threat," echo in my head like thunder. "I don't understand," I whispered. "Why would she see me as a threat? I haven't done anything." Alex looked at me with a mix of pity and urgency. Because, whether you realize it or not, you were the only one who ever stood up to her. You were the one person she couldn't control. And now that she's trying to build this perfect image, even your presence makes her nervous. I shook my head, still trying to process everything. "You're saying she'd rather erase me from her life than risk me telling the truth about what? That she broke off an engagement?" He exhaled sharply. "It's more than that. She broke off an engagement because she cheated with her current husband. He was married back then." The air left my lungs. I stared at him, speechless. "She told me it was a mistake," Alex continued quietly, "that she'd made a choice she couldn't undo. Then she blocked me, disappeared. Tonight was the first time I've seen her since." I leaned against the wall, my mind spinning. My sister, the golden child, the one who claimed I was a disappointment, had built her perfect fairy tale on a lie. But then something else clicked in my mind, a detail that made my stomach twist. Wait, if she cheated with the married man back then, that means... Alex nodded grimly. Yeah, her new husband left his wife because of her. I didn't know whether to feel angry, disgusted, or vindicated. I just knew I had to sit down. "She made it look like you were the failure," Alex said, his tone softening. "Like you were the reason the family didn't trust you. But in reality, she was deflecting, keeping all eyes off of her." Tears burned my eyes, but I blinked them away. "That's why she made me sit alone tonight, to remind me of my place, to make sure I stayed quiet." Alex nodded. "Exactly." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The sound of laughter and clinking glasses from the ballroom echoed faintly through the doors. It felt unreal, like two different worlds were colliding just on the other side of that wall. Then Alex's expression shifted, more serious, almost protective. "Listen, you don't owe her your silence. You've been carrying guilt that isn't yours. It's time someone saw her for who she really is." I swallowed hard. "You want me to expose her? At her own wedding?" He shrugged slightly. "You don't have to try. Truth has a way of coming out on its own." And as if on cue, the doors behind us opened, and there she was. My sister. Her face pale, her eyes sharp with fury. "What the hell are you doing here with him? Did you plan this?" I could barely speak. "I didn't even know he'd be here." She turned to Alex. "You were not invited. Leave before I call security."